In a small village, surrounded by vast farmlands, there lived a farmer named Tunde. He was a man of simple means, selling foodstuffs from the produce he harvested. His life was modest, but he took pride in providing for his wife, Funke, and their three children, Adedayo, Toby, and little Kehinde. Though they lived in a small thatched roof house, it was filled with laughter, warmth, and love. But beneath Tunde's seemingly content exterior, there festered a dark seed of envy. His heart grew heavy each time he saw his childhood friends, who now drove gleaming cars and lived in grand mansions. They had the wealth he craved, and the more he thought about it, the more it consumed him. Why should they have it all while I toil in the fields? He would ask himself, bitterness gnawing at his soul. One evening, as the sky turned a deep shade of orange, Tunde made up his mind. He visited one of his wealthy friends, Shola, hoping to uncover the secrets behind his sudden fortune. After some pleasantries, Tunde could no longer hold back. Shola, I need to know, how did you rise so quickly? How did you gain such wealth? He asked, his voice betraying his desperation. Shola's smile faltered for a moment, then returned with a knowing gleam. Tunde, I will tell you how I fish, he said cryptically. Meet me tonight at the old palm grove and I will show you the way. Tunde's curiosity was pricked. That night, under the cover of darkness, he followed Shola to the grove. The air was thick with mystery as they approached a clearing where several men, shrouded in dark robes, stood in a circle. A cold shiver ran down Tunde's spine. This was no ordinary gathering. This was the brotherhood that had brought his friends their wealth. The leader of the brotherhood, an imposing figure with piercing eyes, welcomed Tunde. What do you seek? He asked in a voice that seemed to echo in the night. I want wealth, Tunde replied, though his voice trembled slightly. I want to live like my friends. The leader nodded slowly. We can grant you what you desire, but every gain has its price. You must sacrifice something dear to you, something irreplaceable. You have three choices: yourself, your mother, or the soul of your second son. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Tunde's heart raised. The thought of sacrificing his own life or his beloved mother filled him with dread. But the idea of sacrificing his young son, Toby, gnawed at him even more. He hesitated, but greed and envy clouded his judgment. I choose my son, he whispered, barely able to meet the leader's gaze. The leader's eyes darkened as he spoke the terms. Your son will be struck by a mysterious illness. He will be fine physically, but his voice will be taken. He will not speak, but will vomit money for you whenever you wish. This is the price you pay. As Tunde left the grove that night, his heart was heavy with the weight of his decision. He knew he had crossed a line, but the promise of wealth dulled the sting of his guilt. The next morning, as the first light of dawn broke over the village, Tunde awoke feeling ill. His bright, energetic spirit was dimmed, and his mother, Funke, noticed immediately. She took him to the village healer, but the man shook his head solemnly. "This illness is not of this world," he said. "It cannot be treated with medicine." Funke's heart filled with dread as she sought help from traditional priests. It was there that the dark truth was revealed. The priests told her of the curse placed on her son, a curse born of her husband's greed. Her blood ran cold with fear, but she was also overwhelmed with anger. Days passed, and Funke watched as Tunde's guilt festered like a wound. She knew she had to confront him, and one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she finally did. "Tunde," she began, her voice shaking, "I know what you have done. How could you?" Tunde's face crumpled as he fell to his knees. "I'm sorry, Funke. I didn't want to lose everything. I thought I was doing it for us, for our future." But Funke couldn't forgive him. The betrayal was too deep, the damage too severe. She could no longer look at him the same way. As her son's condition mysteriously improved, she made a painful decision. She took her children and left Tunde, leaving behind a man who had sacrificed his own blood for wealth. Tunde watched helplessly as his wife and children disappeared into the distance. The life he had once known slipping away like sand through his fingers. The riches he had so desperately sought brought him nothing but misery. And as the years passed, the wealth dried up, leaving him poorer than he had ever been. Funke, on the other hand, found refuge in a distant village where she began a new life as a trader. Her days were filled with the honest work of selling goods in the marketplace, far from the shadow of her past. But even in her new life, the scars of what had happened never truly faded. And so, Tunde was left alone with his regrets, a broken man in a world that had moved on without him. The darkness he had invited into his life now swallowed him whole, leaving nothing but emptiness and despair. But this was not the end of the tale, for the consequences of Tunde's choice were far-reaching, and the past has a way of catching up to those who try to outrun it. Years passed in the new village, and Funke worked tirelessly to build a life for herself and her children. The village market became a second home, where she set up a small stall selling grains, spices, and handmade goods. The work was grueling, but it was honest, and with every transaction, Funke felt a sense of pride and independence that she had never known before. Her children too began to thrive in this new environment. Adedayo, the eldest, showed a keen interest in his studies, often staying up late in the night, reading by the dim light of a kerosene lamp. Toby, though still recovering from the mysterious illness that had once taken his voice, was a quick learner, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. And little Kehinde, who had always been a bright and curious child, blossomed into a young woman full of potential. Despite the hardships, Funke ensured that her children received the best education she could afford. She enrolled them in the village school, where they quickly excelled. She spent her evenings tutoring them, making sure they understood every lesson, and she never missed an opportunity to remind them of the importance of hard work and integrity. As the years went by, Funke's children grew into successful young adults. Adedayo became a respected teacher, known throughout the village for his wisdom and patience. Toby, despite the trauma he had endured, became a skilled craftsman, using his hands to create beautiful works of art that were sought after by people far and wide. Kehinde pursued a career in medicine, driven by a desire to help others and ensure that no one else would suffer as she and her family had. One evening, as the family sat together in their modest but comfortable home, Funke decided it was time to tell her children the truth about their father. They had often asked about him, curious as to why they had grown up without a father figure. But Funke had always evaded their questions. Now, as they were on the cusp of their own lives, she knew they deserved to know the full story. With a heavy heart, Funke recounted the tale of how their father, Tunde, had been blinded by greed and envy. She told them about the brotherhood, the terrible sacrifice he had made, and how she had discovered the dark truth behind Toby's mysterious illness. As she spoke, tears welled up in her eyes, but she pressed on, knowing that they needed to hear it all. When she finished, there was a heavy silence in the room. The weight of the revelation settled over the children like a thick fog, and for a long time no one spoke. Finally, Adedayo, the eldest, broke the silence. "Mama, we understand now why you did what you did," he said quietly. "We are grateful that you choose to protect us, even when it meant leaving everything behind." The others nodded in agreement, their expressions a mixture of sorrow and misunderstanding. They knew now that their mother had made the ultimate sacrifice to give them a better life, and they were determined to honor her by continuing to live with integrity and purpose. Word of the children's success soon spread beyond the village, reaching the ears of Tunde, who had fallen into a life of poverty and despair. He had lost everything: his wealth, his family, and his dignity. The once proud farmer was now a shadow of his former self, wandering aimlessly from village to village, living off the charity of others. When Tunde heard of his children's accomplishments, a flicker of hope sparked within him. Perhaps, he thought, he could find them and ask for their forgiveness. Perhaps they would take pity on him and allow him back into their lives. Driven by his desperate hope, Tunde set out to find them, following the whispers of their success until he finally arrived at the village where they now lived. When Tunde reached Funke's home, he was barely recognizable. His clothes were tattered, and his once strong frame had withered away. He knocked on the door, his heart pounding with fear and anticipation. When the door opened and his children stood before him, the sight of them brought tears to his eyes. They were no longer the small children he had left behind. They were now grown, successful, and strong. Tunde fell to his knees before them. "My children," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion, "I have come to ask for your forgiveness. I was a fool, blinded by greed. I see now the terrible mistake I made. Please, forgive your father." The children looked at each other, then back at the man who had once been their father. Adedayo stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Father, we have heard your story from our mother. We understand the darkness that consumed you, and for that we forgive you. But we cannot forget the pain you caused our family. Your greed nearly destroyed us. Toby, who had regained his voice years ago, added, "We have moved on and we have built a life without you. We cannot allow you back into our lives, for you are a reminder of the greed and envy that once tore our family apart." Kehinde, a voice filled with compassion but resolute, said, "We forgive you, but you must find peace within yourself. You made your choice, and we have made ours. You cannot undo the past, but you can choose to live differently from now on." Tunde's heart broke at their words, but he knew they were right. He had lost his family to his own greed, and there was no going back. With tears streaming down his face, he turned and walked away, leaving behind the life he had once known. As he disappeared into the distance, Funke's voice echoed in his mind, reminding him of the moral lesson he had learned too late. Greed and envy lead only to destruction. True wealth is found in love, integrity, and the family you cherish. And so, Tunde wandered on, a man forever haunted by the choices he had made, while Funke and her children continued to thrive, their lives a testament to the strength that comes from overcoming the darkness with light and the power of living with integrity. Are there viewers? What do you think about this story? Write it in the comment section.